I could tell you the whole story of the Bible just using some grains of barley and wheat. You're probably familiar with the pilgrimage festivals in Israel's calendar: Passover at the beginning of the year, 7 weeks later Pentecost, and then the Feast of Tabernacles or Booths in the fall. Well, they not only commemorate some very significant historical moments in Israel's history: the Passover from Egypt, when God delivered them, the giving of the law on Mount Sinai, and then the Feast of Tabernacles, which celebrates God's compassionate shepherding concern and care for Israel in the desert. But these holidays are also agrarian. During the Feast of Passover, it's also the time when the first omer, or sheaf of the barley harvest, is waved in the temple as a way to signal faith in the coming harvest of grain. First the barley, and then the harvest of wheat. 7 weeks later, after all the latter rains, and after the east wind, and after all the climactic uncertainties of the 7-week period is over, then you actually can celebrate the festival of Shavuot, or weeks, with both barley and wheat, and the beginning of the fields being white unto harvest for a summer of harvest of the grains and the beginning of all the fruit harvesting. The fall is the time when you not only celebrate God's provision in the desert, but also the ingathering of the fruit. The fall represents a time when you have secured a year's worth of sustenance with the grain and the fruit, and it's a time of joy and singing. Well, interestingly, Jesus is called the first fruits from among the dead, and he actually rose from the dead the day of the first fruits. When one sheaf of barley was being waved in the temple, Jesus was raising from the dead, as the New Testament tells us, as the first fruit from among the dead. And he said to wait in Jerusalem, and he didn't say when the Holy Spirit would come, but the Holy Spirit comes on Pentecost, the Feast of Weeks, when people from all over the world would come in, and in the temple they were celebrating the full harvest of barley and wheat. So symbolically, there is now evidence that God has done his part to satisfy Israel with blessing, and also to begin the harvest. As Jesus would say, the fields are white unto harvest, and what happens at that point is, after Pentecost, we're all living in a time of harvest. Until when? Until the Feast of Tabernacles, or Booths, which really is part of the symbolism of the book of Revelation, that all of us will relax in a kind of eternal 7th month, a sabbatical time, when we celebrate that God has brought people from every tribe, tongue, language, and nation to be together in the full harvest of the nations, so that we might rest with our great shepherd forever.